We left ourselves on the question, how do we show this to the user? I don't have a full answer, but I have elements of answer. I don't know if that's the agenda we all agree on. Anybody else has anything else to put on the agenda?
Yeah, so
yeah.
I'm sorry. I sat down and tried to put into a diagram what I was talking about. So I can show you this one, and then
diagramming
this discussion evolves from there, I guess.
I'm very happy to do diagramming. We're behind.
Yeah, this what Timothy is using, this, what is it, diagrams.net, is a great tool actually.
It's simple and shareable, right? It's not for putting in GitHub or anything like that, but it's quick and easy and basic. But you got to do your own make your own diagrams and keys, which confuse you guys, right? Because I made up the function type thing and didn't quite explain it ahead of time, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine. I like the freedom, and you see now I have this instance of a logic argumentation.
Complex.
Yeah, I think I'll dive just right into it, because when we look at what Timothy had here, last time I noted that some of these are not claims. Like this one, life saved is X, is not a claim. So I tried to
separate. I should have made a different type. I would call that a parameterized.
Yeah, whatever it is. I also don't have the good name for it yet.
Yeah. Well, that's what we've been using colloquial. The term we've been using in our group is parameterized claim.
Parameterized claim,
which we haven't defined anything about how it works or whatever. We just know that it puts together a lot of things that vary on one.
Yeah. Or predicate formula or something.
Yeah, but in itself, it's not a predicate because there are values attached to it.
No, it's a formula. It's a formula to make predicates.
Right. So yeah, anyway, these are basically became these yellow boxes. I extracted the values.
I might, by the way, just while we're quickly talking about parameterized claim, I see a relationship between that and general to specific, because in a parameterized claim you're replacing one value. You're creating multiple claims by switching one value, right? In one placeholding, shall we say, whatever our definition of placeholding is. General to specific is also that, where but your thing is not a numerical variable. It's one of your disambiguations or definitions, where instead of
it's a feature,
immigration, it's illegal immigration or whatever. You're getting more specific on one placeholder of a more general claim, right? So there's something in there in that relationship, but we don't have to go into that.
But how does it relate to one or two being more specific than? I mean, the placeholder thing I get, but that doesn't really seem the same than one or two.
It's one or two is more specific than X, the unspecified variable. The X is a generalization.
X is not a claim, as Felix said.
No, it's not a claim. It's absolutely true.
Whereas with generic specific, the generic form is a claim, and the specific one is a claim. So it's not.
Well, but here's the way I see them as related is. Essentially, you could say the cost is 1 trillion, the cost is 2 trillion, the cost is 3 trillion, are essentially sibling claims, right? Where you're swapping that one value. They're kind of sibling claims, whereas in a general specific, sibling claims would be undocumented immigration versus documented immigration versus other kinds. In other words, there's sort of this sibling relationship with something higher that connects them, and it doesn't go into the function thing. So I think,
so that they do have in common. They share part of the claim text, if you will, and a subset of it is parameterized.
Right. You say that if it was all fully disambiguated, everything would be the same in each of the variations of the parameterized claim, except that one parameter that changes.
But you're absolutely right that here the generalization is not itself a claim. It's something else.
Correct.
Which we don't know yet.
but I agree with Tim that it's still on the instance, the general specific axis. And the reason I kept bringing it back, it's we're dealing with set theory here, right? For example, legal and illegal immigrations are a partition of the immigration set. There's immigration and partition into legal and illegal. So we have the subsets. Now, in the case of these numbers, they're disjoint values and probably will have ranges of values or probability distributions or whatever, it doesn't matter. But they're all, is there intersection? Is there overlap? This is between siblings, but they're all a special case of a generality, which is not a claim, but which is still, well, the cost of the economy is something. We don't know what, but it's there. It's going to be, it has a value. That's kind of the general claim. We don't know what it is, but it has a value.
And here's a way I could bring together what I was saying with the formulas that we're going to go through here, or that formula structure. If we decide, for example, to make formulaic claims where, you know, the claim structure itself has the formula inside or something like that, right? If a parameterized claim were a structure we wanted to go with, you could imagine a parameterized claim if the parameters don't have to be numbers, and I imagine at some point we don't need them to be numbers because it might be like
names.
A vaguer version of that might be is
a feature,
mostly all, many, some. That's sort of, you know, we've talked about how adjectives kind of play that same sort of role. You could create a parameterized claim that is like entity A is adjective then entity B, and that's your parameterized claim, where replace entity A with any entity, any adjective in there. And essentially what you've got is a claim structure that is parameterized. There's no relationship between them because you're trading. Yeah. But anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the good thing about what you said, Tim, is that you don't have to do that. It's like only do that if you need it, because here comes my motivation for this diagram. It's basically the whole logic thing. I think I also thought about the motivation, like, why are we doing this? It's about decomposition and relation of these parts, because else, if we only look at the blue parts, which are the claims, if people enter these into the system, how do we connect them? How do we relate them to each other, right? And looking back here from what we talked about yesterday, it was not quite clear. Like, we had a lot of brainstorming and changed a lot, and I think that was because these were different parts, as I already stated. And I think these are the only claims. And so I tried to, I'm not perfectly happy with what came out of it, but it makes sense to me at least. So I want to go through it now. So the only support I see here is this one. Everything else is logically related. So the value of life saved by the lockdown is greater than the cost of the economy. This is supported by, yes, the cost is 1 trillion and the value of human lives is 2 trillion, right? And the other two are actually a decomposition of that claim. And here's the formula that basically can be used as a decomposition, like C is A and B, and here's A and here's B, right? Back to the top here, the value of lives saved by the lockdown is greater than the cost of the economy. Doesn't state what the value and the cost are. So, but it still can be said to be true or false once we know what these values are. So if you put this into a formula, it's basically, yeah, so we have this A thing, the value of human lives is X. And if we know which value it is, then we can plug it into the formula and see if it holds. And this is basically, I'm not sure, this is the parameter, well, whatever the P claim.
Parameterized
Claim. And it's not clear what it is, because it could be many. If we knew what the value was, then it was a claim. Or if or it was a fact. And then we don't have to discuss about it anymore. But since we don't agree what the value is, it's a range, or it's many options or whatever, then we have to abstractly relate to it. And this one here, but this also relates to the volume of human lives saved is 2 trillion. So this is basically, okay, if we plug in a value into this parameterized claim, like if we plug x into a of x, then we get c. That's exactly this claim. And this way I was able to decompose and relate everything to each other, because all the blue ones are things people can put into the system and people will put into a system. But without this logic, we can someone not, or before that, we didn't have the modeling tools to relate them, or we had only had the support. And now, and I'm proposing to relate them with logic formulas, and which goes into first order logic, basically like claims with parameters. So yeah, that's go. Any comments? Marc-Antoine, you're muted.
I like the general direction. There's a lot of specifics I would do that differently, but they're not hugely important. Well, I mean, but yeah, but the general direction I think holds. The notion that there's a way to apply a formula. The notation is not consistent. A dot x, a parenthesis x. These are details.
No, because they're different things.
Oh, okay. Explain more.
Because a, in this case, I think is an instance of something, and I can access to the current value x. And this is really like, this is a of x, like the predicate, and x the value.
Yeah, and this is where I say I would actually do the whole thing very differently. But with this principle of formula, I don't know if I would do the conjunction with formula, by the way, but it's interesting. So
this one on the right.
Before you extrapolate on how you would do it and that sort of thing, just a quick note, which is there's still, I wouldn't call it hand waving anymore, but we know that anytime we create some new external element, entity, right, and connect it to other things, it is a place that requires debate, right? So, you know, you don't have an explicit, within the structure of the claim, the value of human life saved is $2 trillion. There's nothing in the structure of that claim that says $2 trillion, except the word $2 trillion, right? Which means when you connect it up to the value of human lives saved as X, somebody could connect it and plug in 3 trillion, right? And that would be wrong. And that requires then debate or fixing or something, because it's not inherent in the structure of the claim. It could be inherent when we get to the point of disambiguation. I feel like when you have a numerical value, that numerical value is a part of the disambiguation of the claim. If you formalize it, if you formalize and say what each word or each concept is within that claim, then the $3 trillion would be one of those concepts. And then maybe you could plug that concept into there directly and you don't need to debate it. But then, that's thinking way ahead, yeah.
My motivation was to preserve what humans entered as plain text, basically. And then allow a way to decompose and analyze that. And of course, as you said, like if someone connects this one to the other value, then it's wrong, but then it has to be fixed. Like we don't prevent wrong things in the model because progressive formalization.
Right.
I really like this. Yeah, it's interesting. The question is, do we ever have replacement? In the sense, if we have, okay, suppose, let's take the conjunction, because it's a very good example. You know, somebody enters the compound claim and somebody says, okay, let me first decompose this into a conjunction. And yes, using a formula to do so, saying, you know, this is the operator I'm using, it's a conjunction, and here are the components. And let's say, and this is where we get into something that Tim's been trying to avoid, it's, I would tend to say, is that what you said to the author of the claim? Or if the author is not available, I mean, I would basically propose it, and let's say moderators have a kind of scoring, say, yeah, that looks like a proper decomposition. And I want to be agnostic about this, but there's the notion that the decomposition is proposed somehow, it's accepted somehow. And then, do we keep the decomposition? And I tend to keep everything, but do we kind of, is there a way in which we replace the compound with the decomposed version? Say, now this has been superseded by that, and you don't need to look at it as a compound except through the filter of this decomposition, which is what I would want to do eventually.
So
I'd keep the archive of what happened, but yeah.
This is like, I'm going to speak for Stephen now, even though he's here to speak for himself. But this is a, you know, one of the discussions I've been having with him, which is that whole thing about does the old version go away to some degree or not, or is it live? When I say go away, what I mean is it's no longer up for debate. Like I would freeze it and put it in the past, and live debate happens on a new note. But the you know, the thing here, what's interesting is when you're replacing one with another, like you can't even fit it into this structure until you formalize it to the point it's at the, you know, it's at the point it needs to be. So it's like, you know, it's only when it's formalized enough to fit into the whole rest of the structure, which means you need to be transforming it to get it to that point. So the old one can't be used here anyway. Yeah, and I would like to see the old one go away, well, and not be open to live debate, but that's.
And I'm even agreeing with that, by the way. I mean, in the sense, okay, let me rephrase a bit. I think Felix's intuition at some point that, you know, things get more frozen in time is very good, in the sense that you say, okay, I propose this partial formalization, like one step of formalization by doing the decomposition of the conjunction. And maybe somebody else will do the other steps later, but let's just focus on one step. And then nobody contests for a while. So at the very least, somebody contesting later on would have to provide extraordinary evidence, because, you know, people have been living with this decomposition as valid for some time. If you have a very different interpretation, know that this interpretation has been contested by usage, that this first decomposition has been seen as valid. It doesn't mean it cannot be itself superseded, right? But I'd say this, I'm proposing a different interpretation. Okay, well, how does it compete with the other interpretation, other decomposition? And that's a quote unquote harder step than just coming at the beginning and saying, no, you did that wrong. Tim.
So now I'm going to argue against myself and for Stephen, which is, yeah. I mean, this brings up the interesting point of canonicality, right? So if you have a claim that is made, and when you disambiguate it or formalize it in some other way, and you're making steps towards formalizing it, my vision of it is that you leave the informal version in the past, right? So, you know, what does that say about canonicality? Does that say then that the informal version, because it's just an earlier version of the same claim, are they part of the same canonical claim? And if somebody comes in from outside and adds that same claim again informally, well, are you breaking canonicality and it has to be merged because it's still the same claim and you've got a more formalized version? Or is that an opening to, like, you know, formalize it some other path of disambiguation? Or so, like, what happens when somebody recreates a claim that already exists but in the past?
But you're confounding things because these are two entirely separate use cases. That's also why I said before, the fact that the claim of which you replace a part, yeah, sure, that's a common mechanic, but general specific, the canonicality there is that the generic form can be interpreted in many different ways. So in a canonical form, you're going to represent all the most specific ways it can be interpreted to, like, have a canonical representation of all these different discussions.
No, I agree with that.
Wait. Let Marc-Antoine go first.
No. Don't finish that. Finish
Okay.
that.
In this case, where you formalize something more, but not for the sake of disambiguation, but for the sake of modeling efforts, so you can plug into a function, it's an entirely different use case. But because there's no necessary, you're not formalizing for the sake of resolving disagreements. You're formalizing for the sake of enabling some function, which I call has all to do with scoring and whatever. But
or optimizing, reducing the number of repetitive arguments, but reducing the size of the graph, essentially.
I think
I still need to see visualizations of how
relation.
you intend to reduce things, because that's still not clear to me.
But
I
just want to throw out one quick distinction back on what you said about the general to right. That's different from what I was saying, which is an ambiguous claim. That's not ambiguous because it's a general claim, but it's ambiguous because it hasn't been disambiguated. An informal claim that's ambiguous because you haven't done the work of formalizing it, as opposed to general to specific, which I agree. You can have a fully disambiguated general statement, right? Where my definition of disambiguation is you've applied definitions to every term in the claim, but they're still ambiguous terms, right? You stated I specifically mean these ambiguous terms. You have disambiguated it in the language I'm using, as opposed to you just said a sentence and left it out there informally.
I don't believe in that, because you're just referring things to a definition that's supposed to be non-ambiguous, but it's recursive. I mean, that in itself.
But you can't have you can't ever have a fully disambiguated.
Exactly.
It's aspirational.
You can only have a fully defined, right? So maybe we mean defined, a fully defined term that's ambiguous, a fully defined.
It can always be defined, but the question is, do people interpret it in the same way? The thing that is defined, and by adding
but the difference is, if it's just a sentence, it's just a sentence. And like the Paris, going back to the Paris example, it's just a sentence, and Paris can be anything.
You just refer just a sentence to more sentences, which can again recursively be ambiguous. Yes, you move the problem, you don't solve it.
That is correct, but that doesn't mean you haven't improved the situation. There's a difference between saying it's not, it doesn't fully solve the problem.
But what I mean is this: when I say, you know, Paris is beautiful or whatever, Paris is nice, as just one sentence that I threw out there, it's informal and not disambiguated. It's just a claim entity on its own. When I say Paris and I attach the disambiguation of the city in France, have I created a new, more specific claim? Or have I formalized or disambiguated my original statement, which is a different thing? Because I don't expect to see on any tree from general to specific, going from Paris to Paris, the mythical figure versus the city. That's not general to specific to me. That's disambiguating with definitions, and that's formalization. And that's a different process. That's why I say I see a distinction between general to specific and the process of disambiguation or whatever.
Felix, I think Paris is nice I would not say that an ambiguous claim is the same thing as a claim formula. Like the claim formula cannot be said to be true in any true or false in any interpretation. Whereas Paris is nice is ambiguous, fine, but it still has meaning in some interpretations. Like interpretations
like I said before, the function claim here, the parameterized claim here would be entity is adjective, right? That's the form.
But before that, that's a side issue. I'd like to ask a very fundamental question before we get into all that. Can we look back at the other side of the when we say A and B equals C, I think there's an object missing here, and that's the compound claim. What I think we're saying is we had C, which was an informal claim. We isolated A and B, which are also informal, but slightly more precise. And then with the formula, we're joining A and B with, I would call it D, the formal conjunction of A and B. And I'm saying the formal conjunction of A and B, D, is a valid interpretation of C. So for me, there's two things. There's the formula creating this distinct object, which is the more formal conjunction of A and B, and the link saying D is a valid interpretation of C. There's the equivalence between those. Now, that's how I would do it. I'm not saying it has to be that way, but I'm just putting that way that we're having a lot of linguistic confusion here, which I suspect it's because that D got elided in your diagram. Tim.
And this is where, like, you know, I would say we could just call A and B equals C the compound claim, and then we have the compound claim, because I don't see a need to apply arguments in support or opposing A and B equals C. However,
that's okay. That's another problem I have with the diagram. When you have the 1 trillion X, for me, this automatically creates a claim, right? The application of the 1 trillion value to cost of economy as X creates a claim, the A of X. And again, we're saying this A of X is equivalent to the thing you just selected because I'd separate the application of the formula from the claim resulting from the formula. I would. But here, I don't want to confuse the formula in its full abstraction, A and B equals C, the notion of conjunction, with saying applying conjunction to A and B yields this resulting compound claim, which is the result of applying the formula. I want to say there's the formula and there's applying the formula, the same as there's the parameterized claim and the result of the applying a value in the parameterized claim. And in your Paris example, there's the ambiguous claim, which is not a parameterized claim because it's a claim in its own right, and the disambiguation of the ambiguous claim. But these are all distinct objects in my mind.
So what you're suggesting is basically we draw a box around these and say, okay, this is the conjunction, and this is equivalent to this one.
A and B is equal to the conjunction, and there's an interpretation operation, because there's a formula that says, okay, let's take these two and create the conjunction object, and there's the interpretation saying, hey, this conjunction is a faithful interpretation of the text claim in C.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering,
but maybe that's too many.
I can see that. I can see that it is something different. And then the other way, I'm thinking, okay, this is completely isomorphic. Why is it different?
I don't think it's completely isomorphic, because it does answer the question you were asking, that Tim was asking earlier. What if somebody, again, comes up with the text version after the text version has been put in the past? Well, we can equate the text version, the new text version, to the old text version, because somebody just, for example, put them in different order. And once they've been equated, we can say, well, hence they have the same interpretation, which is the formal conjunction.
reminds me of dropping equality in the past. We did that, right?
What?
We dropped equality in the model or we postponed it because we said
we postponed it because
yeah.
it's curation. Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? I would curate the equivalent to the text version, which would be, by the way, now we've accepted that interpretation, which means that whoever looks at the text version will say, by the way, this has been superseded by this more formal conjunction, which itself may eventually be superseded by the result of the A of X formula, which is the next step, but whatever. And so you'd get from superseded to, okay, this is the more formal version of this text claim that you're now looking at, because this interpretation has not been contested in all this time. Or if it's been contested, it's been refuted.
Wouldn't the superseded thing, couldn't this also be solved by having a per node history and you're basically preserving the history?
You could. I'm trying to deal with relation between immutables as opposed to mutables. But
yeah, you can still like
your mileage may vary. What is clear is the question is, what happens when you're pointing to the version? Do you have a name? And I'm more and more of the opinion that everything has a mutable and an immutable aspect. That is
absolutely, yes. And I'm saying the history can still be stored in an immutable way.
Yeah. But are you pointing to the immutable aspect, that is to this text thing, and then you have to go through the history links to get the most recent version? Are you pointing to the mutable aspect, whichever is latest? And then what happens if there's contention about the interpretation? Then you may have more than one. And this is why the linking to immutable is good, because then you can go through the links and say, oh, there's a branch and there's this agreement about interpretation here. I'm sorry.
No, I have something I want to say, but you're on.
I'm done.
You guys are talking about something else, and I want to let you finish. So,
I think, I just want to say, like, I think it's possible to do that in an immutable way. And then when you say I'm basically having a new version of this node, I'm also adding the corresponding edges.
Yep.
And maybe flagging the others immutably or whatever.
What I'm saying, sometimes you're pointing to, sometimes you're pointing to immutable, sometimes you're pointing to mutable. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a whole long discussion too, but I generally agree with that. Maybe everything is immutable, but like I also think that each new version or each new branch is kind of a latest. It needs a tag of what's the most recent or something, so you can see just how things are now. But okay, what I want to go back to is I still disagree with the equals C part of this construction. I don't think that's right.
Which one? The A and B equals C?
Equals C, yeah.
Okay.
Or rather, I don't think C is something that should be external to that node. And I don't think C is some external claim you've connected it to, right? Either C is auto-generated by the function thing, and then it's kind of unnecessary to have as a separate entity, or that C should not exist, which is more or less what I'm saying here. In this example, okay, it kind of makes sense, but the example that I think would highlight this is when you have competing formula trying to prove the same thing, right? So like the F equals MA doesn't quite work. It's not as easy, but what if we had like the velocity that somebody is falling at after 10 seconds, right? And so you say after 10 seconds, this person will be falling at 980 meters, 98 meters per second squared, right? And so you have that claim. Maybe we should build that claim right here now. Go ahead and throw a standalone claim.
Can I get permission to access that thing? Because I'd like to do my own version.
I sent it to you, didn't I?
Oh.
It's in the. I posted it in Hangouts. Finally, it took me a while because my computer.
No, you posted it. You posted it, but then I don't have access.
I thought it was an editable link.
Nope.
me to
But
load
you
it
can see
forever.
it. You could also just make a copy.
I can't
if we
even
can.
see it. It tells me I have to
Really?
request access to even see it.
On the link I posted. That's
Yes.
dumb.
Sorry to be
Very dumb.
annoying
Oh, it's
about
not your
this.
fault.
No, but it's good. We should all be able to edit.
Yes, please.
But
It looks like it isn't viewable. Oh, it says it looks like it isn't viewable by anyone here. Share to anyone with the link and allow them to edit. Oh, there's like a try now.
Will do.
There was a message in Slack asking me to give permissions, which is the first time I've seen that.
Loading.
So
Yeah.
if you could create Felix a new claim,
Thanks.
just a standalone claim to start, right? So the velocity, the skydiver, whatever, will be falling at after 10 seconds is 98 meters per second squared. Okay.
No,
That's-
not second square, velocity.
My 98 meters per second. Sorry. Thank you. I got like 100% on the advanced physics tests in high school to give me college credit, and then forgot everything. You can see
That's
I'm
how
like
it
stumbling
goes.
through all this.
education
Okay.
is all about. You know.
Yeah.
And I somehow
okay.
still remember it.
So now we want to, yeah, good, yeah. Now we want to copy one of those function structures for you, right? We're going to prove it through, what is it? Velocity equals acceleration times time or whatever.
And no, there's a square in there, actually. I'm trying to remember the formula. I don't remember fully, damn it.
Well, it's meters per second squared times seconds. So it's acceleration. Isn't that acceleration? 9.8 meters per second squared times seconds. So that would be V equals A times T. Close enough. Okay.
I think you're right, actually.
And then somebody says,
But
okay,
Tim,
well,
maybe
we've got.
can you edit live, because it's easier, I guess, when you do it yourself.
If I do it, okay. Yeah.
And I think we still see the live changes here.
Okay.
Yeah, V equals AT, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, the square's in the distance.
I don't even remember that. Here we go. Okay, so V equals AT. So okay. I mean, I guess we have time falling is 10 seconds, right? And that's somehow V, right?
Dates are slow. Oh well. I mean,
V, no, A, no, T. Ugh. Acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second. Your A.
I'm preparing some errors.
Now, what is the C here? Actually, it's V. So it's in other words, in this case, it's not V, it's C, right? So our V. Okay, yeah, I already got. I did this T again. It should be A. No, it is A. What is it? Behaving very strangely. Anyway. Okay, there's your V. So wait, now I need you say, what is the V? Fill that in for me. I guess Felix, fill that in for me.
What should I do?
Fill in, what is V? Fill in the claim that you're saying is V.
So
yeah.
but that's what the one at the top is, right?
Okay. Okay. So then it goes up there.
That's the text
Right.
version.
Now. Yeah, exactly. That's my point, which is this. Somebody comes along and says, no, 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 you totally forgot about air resistance, right? And proposes a different function, which I have no idea what that is. V equals A times T max, I don't know, minus air resistance, which is probably a max function. Yeah, or like with a max.
I think.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't matter. I'll call it AR as air resistance, and we can create a claim. The air resistance is something. Or maybe it's A equals.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be right. It just has to. And so somebody else is going to do my A and my. Now I need a. Air resistance. Air resistance is 5 airs per resistor. Obviously, I'm making something up here now. Now, what is the V for this one? Where's the V claim here?
well, I keep saying we need to have distinguish the formal from the informal. But what we have here is also another aspect. It's the implicit claim of this is the applicable formula. So there's two things. There's interpretation and there's applicability. I don't know if they're distinct. I would think they are actually. And basically the new formula comes in with, there's a claim, which is we've left implicit, but should probably be explicit, saying this is the appropriate, that formula is the appropriate formula. And another claim contesting, saying no, the most appropriate formula is this one. And this is actually the, not support, but objection. This is the objection to the original claim, that we can, this formula is the proper formula. So first I would say the V equals AT produces a formal claim, like applying this formula to those premises gives this result. And this would support the text claim velocity is blah, 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 or would be an interpretation of. And actually it would be a support in this case. And somebody would make the similar and implicit claim, this is the appropriate formula. And then same structure with the second formula, and then the objection argument, this is more appropriate than that.
Which is exactly what I was trying to show yesterday, which is like you don't need, well, there's two parts here. One is the connection from the connection that's labeled V right now is, like you said, it's actually a supports structure that could be argued against or for, right? Because now you have two different functions or equations that are being used to prove the top claim, which is what we care about. And there needs to be debate. Huh?
An equation can hold or cannot hold. Like I tend to think that an equation is a claim, because you could also write not equal. It has a negation.
An equation is an equation. An equation is an equation that has some sort of outcome.
No, the applicability as a negation is how I would do it.
Yeah. The equation, again, like according to our definitions of claim, I don't think an equation is a claim. An equation is what it is. It's an equation. It's two things that are equal or not equal or whatever, right? Some formula.
But you can argue about it, like have a
no
contra argument.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. You don't argue it. Where would you place that argument? You would place it on the V there, pointing to the thing it's supporting. In other words, what you're arguing about is whether or not it supports or best supports the claim you're trying to prove, right? That's the only place where debate is at all relevant, because the equation is an equation. You can't have a different V for the A and T that we've provided. There's no way to, no. I mean, like Marc-Antoine says, you can debate about whether the outcome applies to reality. You can say, okay, yeah, sure, it calculates 98 meters per second, but I know the answer is 50 meters per second. We have to figure out why, which means you're debating the top level claim, but you're not debating the outcome of the equation. You're not saying, no, 10 seconds times 9.8 meters per second squared is 50. I know it's 50. I don't know why, but I know it's 50. No, you know that the person's falling at 50. You don't know that A times T is 50. You know that something's wrong with your conclusion, and the word
like
conclusion in this case is very
wrong, or the other values are wrong.
Right, which means you're debating about the formula, or you're debating about the inputs to the formula, which is what I've been saying all along.
I'm working on making what I'm saying explicit. And it takes a bit more time.
Just a note, in 10 minutes, I have a hard stop again.
Yeah. Objects 2, and there's a kind of meta claim. If one is applicable. So actually what we have is a conjunction of these two that supports, and if 2 is applicable, and I'm hand waving here because I should make the conjunction into its own box. And there's also a link saying that this objects to, yeah. And I wish I had a way to make the, I probably can actually.
Can I help you somehow?
Possibly, but I think I'm fine. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, it's fine on my screen, and your screen will catch up eventually. I've noticed that it's quite slow, but yeah, this is it. Okay, go. So here I'm saying where I've partly always agreed with you is my orange boxes. On the one hand, so these would be the result of applying the formula. And this should be F2, by the way, but you get the point. Those are automatically generated by the formula apparatus, and hence are not, it's not disputed that they're the result of this. Still, they're claims because you can object to the result. Hence, the result is. And here, maybe I am kind of budging. I'm thinking about it, but there's something intermediate that is unarguable, and there's the next step, which is saying this applies to the situation, which is arguable. The saying the resulting and here it shouldn't be 98, it should be 28. There's needs to move, but anyway, those are details. So there's generating the calculated value. And that generates a claim, which is, I probably would still need to show. I need to work more on this diagram, but the claim is, hence the end result is 98 in this situation, which supports or objects to the text claim. The text claim, there's maybe a separate process of formalizing it, saying, well, V equals 98, and that is a number, like identifying the 98 velocity in that text. Here, I'll suppose it's already done, but the variable identification, the entity identification should have been done, or should be done eventually, so that the support and objects can be made, quote unquote, formal. I can make an informal support or object to the text, or I can make a formal support with variable values if the variables being identified, right? Those are distinct steps. And it's the conjunction of function result, unarguable, and function applies, arguable, means resulting claim, we have 98, which is seen as here supporting the original text claim. So there's boxes missing, but I think making this formal, making the result object into a distinct object is useful. Like there's a formula and there's the applying the formula to those premises, which is, and there I agree with you, unarguable in its own right, though it does yield a claim, not shown here, which is arguable in its own right.
But that is the question to some degree, is there any point to separating the, I don't know what color they are, orange or beige, boxes from the purple box, knowing that one automatically generates the other, and they don't really exist separately. Do they exist separately, I guess?
They totally exist separately, because F1 could be generating all kinds of other orange boxes with different premises. If I say, no, we're on Mars.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I understand the purple box as being an instance of, or a use of the function rather than the function itself, which is, so that's true. Yeah,
I'm saying the function itself is an object that needs to be modeled.
Which is also, okay, so this brings a good point I've been thinking about too while we were talking about this, to bring to Stephen's attention, I guess, as leaning towards what we need to discuss about whether or not we need these structures, right? Which is, how does this simplify the debate, right? First of all, is it required for the debate? No, it's not required. You can have the debate totally informally. I think it helps reduce the clutter in the debate. Now, looking at this, right, we have different kind of fields of debate here going on with this one thing, right? One of them is, what is the time of falling? What is the acceleration? There's those things which are on the facts. You have another kind of field of debate, which is so let's say you want to, if it's an instance of the function and you want to propose alternate facts, do you need to have different copies of this structure here for each set of facts, right? That's one of the questions. Now
you have a different function application, but the same function, a single function.
Exactly. You have F equals V equals A times T with a different A and a different T for each different A and T combination. Okay. Now, one thing they have in common is the debate over which function is the more appropriate function is a common debate, right? So you don't need to rehash those arguments over and over again with each instance or use of the function. Okay. A good question for Stephen would be, or to go over for the sake of Stephen and me and all of us, is what would this look like without this structure? And are there ways to encapsulate that without having this? Because, I could see, for example, the claim that in this particular case, the function using air resistance is more appropriate than the one without air resistance. And that would be a claim. And then in that way, we have, using informal structures, centralized all the arguments for and against. And then I guess for each application of that, you would copy over the result of that.
Because it's a skydiver and not a cannonball.
Yeah. No, but in this case, once you've settled which formula is better as a separate claim, then you use that claim to support any claim that uses the air resistance function as opposed to the other, right? Yeah. So there is a kind of encapsulation you can do even in informal structures. The question is that good enough? It doesn't solve the problem of the facts, the variability of facts. It solves the problem of choosing which function, but it doesn't solve the problem of what is, because it's an open-ended question, what is the amount of time that they've been falling? And what is the acceleration according to Earth's gravity? Those are not true or false questions. They're open-ended questions with
you had a hard stop. Stephen had a good question. I think I have answers. You probably do too, but I don't know how.
It's not answers. I've never, ever in my life done so much analysis on modeling without any UI mockups. I just don't get why we spent 3 full meetings on discussing how to model MOF in an argument map without having any consideration that would look like a user interface.
Yeah, I proposed talking about UX at the beginning, but yes, but you know what? I think this was necessary, by the way. But let's spend time on UX to Friday. How's that?
Yeah, I will spend some time, if I get it, to try to lay this out in debate map, because that is a structure that doesn't have these more formal structures, and we can see what that looks like in debate map. I'll try.
Okay, well, I don't know how much time I'll have on UX, unfortunately, crazy days ahead, but I'll try to have something to show. It's important because it's a valid question.
It's really hand-wavy claims to say this reduce clutter. I don't see it.
I agree. I even agree. I think it's a claim I can justify, but it'll be work to justify it.